Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Pamela Sawa versus Karen Carabajal fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content and I will try my best to get out there for you guys. There has been a great selection of videos that has come from there so far, and I do really appreciate all the support in which I've had with it. Let's get straight into this one though, and this is a fight which is for the IBO World Lightweight title, and I think it's definitely an interesting one. I mean, there's quite a few unbeaten contenders around the women's lightweight division at the moment, but none of them are really, standing out enough to really kind of stake a claim to be next in line for somebody like a Beatrice Ferreira or a Caroline Dubois, or anybody like that really. And I mean, people as fans, we want to be seeing these unification fights between these champions, and there's also Terry Harper as well, but we also need to have these contenders coming through as well, which can give, of course, these champions competition. And I feel like Pamela Sawa perhaps could be that. And, if not, then Karen Carabajal is going to be able to expose that in this fight. I think it's a good fight, a good matchup. Of course, for anybody who doesn't know Pamela Sawa, she is an unbeaten fighter, Italian fighter. She's the current EBU European champion. She's 9-0 and has all of her professional fights from her home country of Italy, where, of course, this fight is held. She is also having her first main step up, like I've talked about, into kind of world level opposition in this fight. And of course, like I say, last time out, she went out there and I believe it was in her last fight, if not the fight before, she went out there and picked up that EBU European title, which, if you've seen her Instagram, you can tell how much that meant to her and how much kind of passion and raw emotion she had after the fight, which was, really nice to see. And like I say, you can see how much she has to work for it and how hard it's been to get to the position. But like I say, it really did pay off, of course, when she became EBU champion. And then actually, I think it was 2 fights ago she became EBU champion, if I'm thinking correctly. And then in her last fight, I'm pretty sure she won via first round stoppage. Again, I might be wrong, this is just off the top of my head, but again, that's an impressive first defence of the EBU title, and to now push on to that of an IBO title against a recognisable name as well in the division. I think, it's nice to see. It's good for her career progression, and I think it's definitely going to be an interesting but tough matchup for Carabajal, for Sawa as well. And so, something in which Pamela Sawa is also doing quite well. Of course, she's an Italian fighter. There isn't really a tremendous amount of kind of known Italian talent in the male and female game, and she's kind of going down the football route a bit more. I've seen that she's been promoted a bit by Bologna Football Club. She's been featured on their Instagram a couple of times, I believe, and she is often pictured in their interviews and stuff like that wearing the Bologna football shirt. And again, that's of course a good strategy to go down to get some more fans and things like that as well. And of course, that's will inevitably build your profile, as of course, like I mentioned, there's not really a tremendous amount of fighters who will be representing that football team. So again, that's nice to see as well. Of course, she's up against a much more experienced fighter in Karen Carabajal, who has fought against higher world level opposition. And of course, that first fight in which she had, which was a real step up in opposition, was Katie Taylor, of course, one of the best, if not the best, women's boxers of all time. She fought Katie Taylor in 2022 and then Rhiannon Dixon in 2024, which was, of course, both for world titles, and they both did end up in unanimous decision defeats. However, she was still able to go the distance with both of them, even though, she did get dropped against Dixon. She ended up giving Dixon quite a good run for her money. I know that Dixon went on to inevitably lose against the current champion in Terry Harper, but if, if Carabajal was able to win against Sawa, then maybe she could put herself back in some sort of line to be able to get in against somebody like a Terry Harper, because, she did, if she had not been knocked down against Rhiannon Dixon. Perhaps she could have actually gone on to maybe cause a bit of an upset, or at least have the fight a little bit closer, but nonetheless, of course, she wasn't able to do that. And again, against Katie Taylor, she did well to go the distance, but for the most part, she was pretty outboxed. She was able to showcase the heart and the will and the design, the desire and the work rate later on into the rounds, which I'm sure she's going to be able to do into this fight. But you know, she was still beaten convincingly, in my opinion. Otherwise, for the other kind of fights in her career, she spent the majority of it, well, otherwise she has spent all of it in Argentina fighting, which is her home country, and now for another technical, I suppose if you count an IBO title as a true world title fight, she's now returning to the opponent's home country, which you do have to respect. Of course, it does take a lot for a fighter to be able to get a win, in an opponent's home country. So for her to be willing to do that on now a third occasion against another unbeaten fighter, it's impressive. And of course, it shows the mindset in which she has, the underdog mindset in which she does, of course, have. To speak about both fighters individually, though, we'll start off with Pamela Sawa, and she's somebody who is a strong pressure fighter. She's often able to hold her ground well, and she wants to, for the most part, kind of just throw with her opponent. She's definitely willing to have a war, and if she sees her opponent's kind of loading up or going for some shots, she'll then just straight away initiate and try and throw her own at the same time to try and catch her opponents off guard and try and be able to land better in exchanges, which is, so far in her career, of course, like I said, the level hasn't been tremendously high, but so far in her career, she has been able to land better in exchanges than her opposition. She is able to punch through her opponents as well. You can see, in the way that she fights, again, like I've talked about, you can see the passion and just that kind of raw aggression when she is throwing. And like I say, she's really putting everything into all of her combinations in which she throws. And for the most part, a lot of the work in which she throws is in combinations as well. So, the fact she's able to also, push that through a guard and really kind of split open opposition when she is throwing, even if perhaps, her record doesn't suggest that she's able to get many knockouts. She has a compact guard, and for the most part, she is able to, start with a high tempo and then maintain that high tempo as well throughout the majority of the fight. Again, she has bits at times, where she'll kind of ease off a little bit, but for the most part, she's able to, whenever she's throwing, for the most part, she is maintaining that high tempo and trying to overwhelm her opposition. She's, like I said, aggressive. She gives a rule. She can also, deal with fighting in a clinch as well. She can be quite a physical fighter, and she's willing to be a physical fighter. And perhaps that could cause a few problems to Carabajal as well. Negatives about her: I think she's quite a tense fighter. I think a lot of her work is very tensely thrown, which can lead to energy kind of wastage at times, and can also lead to, if she gets caught with a shot, she could get caught quite flush with a shot because she's throwing so tensely. And she also does often come in with quite a short stance, which can lead to her being off balance quite a bit. She doesn't really have the best. Well, she does have alright head movement, but she just doesn't use it enough. She's got head movement where she's able to duck and weave under shots, but again, it's nice when she does it. She just doesn't do it enough, in my opinion. She stands quite tall and can be made to smother her work. Like I say, she can fight well in a clinch though, so that's not really often always a problem. She can kind of lean back a bit if she is ever trying to, not initiate at the same time as her opponent, and at that point she is just exposing her chin in the air. She is flat-footed. She forgets her jab, at times as well, and is trying to be quite reckless at times coming in. She is a big target, stood in front of her opponent. I think, this might sound a bit harsh, but she does have quite minimal kind of technical fundamental ability. In my opinion, it's a lot more on, like I say, that pure aggression side of things, and she can, forget about her defensive elements quite often. And, she's of course not used to fighting on the back foot at all. And when she goes toe to toe with somebody like Carabajal, who can also be an aggressive fighter when she wants to be, it could be an interesting dynamic to see if Sawa is pushed on and forced onto the back foot. To speak about Carabajal, though, she's somebody who, as well, she's going to try and throw a lot. And, that's been seen in all of her fights, even when she's been, knocked down against a Rhiannon Dixon. She's come back and tried to throw a lot and tried to still kind of initiate exchanges and things like that. She's always, for the most part, wanting to respond with anything in which she gets caught with as well. Unlike Sawa, who's trying to always lead, she's always trying to respond with her own counters and things like that. But again, the accuracy can be a bit of a problem. But again, it might not be a problem against somebody like Sawa, who doesn't really, pull back after exchanges and just stays in range a bit too long. Then, to carry on speaking about Carabajal, she is able to use her full range when throwing and can maintain a bit of a distance at times, which again might be something in which Sawa isn't used to, that kind of stopping of letting her just walk through shots and to come in whenever she fancies. She's willing to go back and forth with her movements and keeps her head off her line for pretty well for the most part. She's got pretty fast hands and will continue to walk forwards. She works off a jab quite a lot, which she's often able to pair up. Again, the accuracy on it can be a bit of a problem, but she does try and pair that up. She keeps her hands pretty high. Again, she's not got the strongest of guards, unlike, Sawa, who is quite compact with her guard, but she does try and keep her hands up. She, like I say, is always trying to catch you on the way out and doesn't have bad singular body shots either. When she can step into a body shot, that is quite nice as well. She has a good level of experience, which I think is on show more into the later rounds. She can use, a bit more experience based tactics into them later rounds, and you can see, the fact that she is used to being in the ring and comfortable in them later, more championship rounds, I suppose. And like I say, she can maintain a bit of a distance. Negatives about her, I think for the majority of the punches in which she throws, but the few shots in which she lands where she's stepping into her punches, a lot of the shots she throws are arm punches, which again doesn't really generate a tremendous amount of power. They can be frustrating and they can still cause damage, but it's not really being twisted into. It's not a great range of motion in which she's throwing, and it can just be kind of wafting the arm out a bit at times. She can often be kind of punching her straight shots downwards, which is a bit of a strange thing as well. Not really always landing them clean on the head and just kind of always diagonaling them downwards, if that makes sense. She has messy footwork at times. Her accuracy, like I say, is something in which really can be off. Her timing, like I say, isn't really the best, even though she is often trying to counter. Like I say, trying to counter. Sometimes she is overly aggressive herself and can be timed. She does sit on the ropes if she is backed up. She's not as physically strong, in my opinion, and can be too far out of range, can then, as a result, have difficulties and issues finding her range. She hasn't got the power to gain the opponent's respect quite a lot of the time, and that will be interesting to see if she does gain the respect of Sawa, who of course is the unbeaten fighter who has probably seen her up against the likes of a Katie Taylor. Will she be able to gain the respect from somebody like Sawa? She seems to kind of fight at the same level of ability at a mid-range or in close, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but she doesn't seem to have a specialty where you can look at it and be like, well, she's clearly much better in close, or she's clearly much better at a mid-range. She's kind of at a same level at both, which isn't a tremendously high level at both, if that makes sense. And she can start a bit too eager and kind of jittery and a bit reactive too early on. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I think that Pamela Sawa is going to be able to win by split decision. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think Carabajal's kind of timed counters in which she tries to throw, which again, like I say, often she isn't able to land, will probably land a bit more because again, like I say, I think Sawa will be in close and will be there to be landed on a bit more. But I think the aggression, the come forward style, the pushing back of Carabajal will probably, cause problems to Carabajal, and I think the judges will like to see that as well. And it will just be interesting to see if at any point in the fight Carabajal is actually able to push Sawa back. Again, with the physicality being a bit less, unless Sawa is heavily respecting Carabajal coming into this fight, then I just don't see that she'll be able to. I think that the more natural, raw aggression of somebody like a Pamela Sawa will inevitably, like I say, be able to win her this fight, which isn't something in which I would say for a lot of fights. If she does at some point take a step up against one of the elite names in the lightweight division, then she can't really just rely on pure aggression alone. But I think with a fight like this, she probably could win it just because, like I say, I think she is that bit physically stronger of a fighter. Who I think she'd go on to fight next? Again, if this fight is a really close fight, which you could argue could go either way, then there's no harm in having opposition in which recently have fought for a world title, and I think there's definitely a few fighters in the division which could make sense. Somebody like a Ferreira, who recently fought Beatrice Ferreira, or a Monio, who also recently fought Beatrice Ferreira. They're two names there who, yes, lost quite comfortably against Beatrice Ferreira, but, still went and gave her the test and was willing to be there against her and was a world ranked contender. They're good matchups as well, similar to like a Carabajal kind of level of experience and level. If not a Mi Shin went and had a pretty decent, surprisingly, impressive performance against Caroline Dubois. So perhaps a matchup like that could be, but maybe that's a little bit, maybe that's a fight that could happen in a couple fights. I'm not entirely sure, but nonetheless, like I say, I feel like she could definitely go down a route which kind of can create a way to get her a world title shot. And like I say, with already having the European title under her belt, that's definitely a good route to get her a world title shot within another, 1, 2, or 3 more fights. But like I say, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like video if you did indeed like video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.